Are you a traveler? Or are you a tourist? What do you think of when you plan a vacation? Do you think of the places you want to go to? Do you think of the activities? What is on your mind? Is it Europe? Is it the Africas? Is it the Americas? Or is it Indian villages? What do you think of when what do you want to do? Do you think of adventure? Do you think of culture? When you travel, are you looking for the food that you want to eat? Or is it about the people that you want to talk to? Or is it just shopping? But what if I told you that probably there is some other consideration that you may not have thought about? What if I told you that there is a way to go to a travel without planning about it? Have you ever done that? Have you ever visited a place without planning for it? Have you ever visited a destination without having a concrete itinerary? I want to talk to you today about a story of a solo trip that I made in Ladakh in 2010, some 12 years ago. Ladakh, or also known as the land of high mountain passes, it's one of the most harshest and the toughest geographies in the planet today. It's one of the most harshest inhabited regions in the world today. This area that you see here is about 60,000 square kilometers of vast nothingness. In this area, there are thousands of little tiny hamlets of people who have settled here for centuries. Each hamlet has an average of just 50 homes. Temperatures in Ladakh drop down to minus 50, even minus 60 degrees in the winter. Many villages are cut off for about 6 months of a year. People cannot travel into these villages for 6 months. They buy their supplies, and if they have to be taken out, they are either airlifted or they are air-dropped. People here are sustenance farmers. Having lived in these remote mountain settlements for so long, they're completely dependent on the outside world for their supplies. Nothing grows in Ladakh, but the bare minimum staples that they have is what they completely depend upon. Most of the villages in Ladakh still don't have access roads. Most of them do not have continuous electricity. Many of them do not have mobile connectivity. There are still villages that you have to trek and walk for a few days even to reach. And this was a region in which I took a solo trek in 2010. Nothing I had ever read had prepared me for what Ladakh was all about. All I had was a few articles on high altitude acclimatization in Ladakh. Here is a picture of me trying to cross the river Zanskar. As you can see, there isn't any road. The only way for me to cross the river Zanskar was to sit in that little wooden crate, suspended over by a rope bridge, which was pulled on both sides. I had to cross this river to reach the other side and start my 7-day trek. I trekked multiple mountain passes. I was alone. I trekked multiple mountain passes to reach the villages I needed to go to. This here is a picture of me reaching one of the topmost mountain passes called Gong Marula. Where I reached the top, it's almost 17,000 feet. I walked and stayed in village homes. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have an itinerary. I didn't know what I was going to do. This village has just one home with 3 inhabitants, 2 of whom you see here. I stayed with them for 3 days, dependent on what they cooked and what they had in their village. And this is the one visit that totally changed my life. This is a picture of a school, the entire school. 7 children. The 7th one was sleeping. And that there is one of the 2 teachers in this tiny school of 7 children who I visited. To reach this school, it took me 3 days of walk. I spent a day in this school. I went over the books. I went over what they had. As you can see, they don't have even the basic infrastructure. The entire school is exactly that one room. What humbled me the most was a request of the teacher, who himself had come from a much remote village and who asked me. He said, I haven't seen tomatoes in many months, and I was carrying supplies for a 7-day trek. He said, do you have any? I will trade my bottle of Nescafe for you, with you. I said, no, keep the Nescafe and here are the tomatoes. He hadn't gone home in 6 months, but he was here teaching these 7 children. I looked around and I was reminded of my school, where my children go, and the school where I taught and where I myself taught, a school somewhat like what you are in today, with the best of amenities, with the best of infrastructure, with the best of teachers, and the best of facilities. And I compared it to this school. And I was completely flabbergasted. What hurt me the most was how little I knew about a part of India that was just hidden behind the mountains. So I came back with just a plan to do something. Nothing besides that, just to do something. I had no plans on what I was going to do. There was just this one thought which said I needed to do something. I came back and I said, had I known that there's going to be a little school there, I could have carried a box of chocolates. Had I known that there would be 7 children in there, maybe I would have taken a football, some storybooks for them to read, some games for them to play. Why did I not know that? Why is there so little information about this on the web? This village was not on the map. It still isn't. And then I wondered, if I feel this way, what about others? Would there be many other people who would go there and feel similarly, that had I known that there was a little tiny village on this map, if somebody had told me, maybe I could have helped. So I came back and I started 17,000 Feet Foundation, a not-for-profit dedicated to transforming villages in the remote areas of Ladakh. We started off by saying, let us visit all the schools. So my co-founders and I, we spent the next 3 months traveling and visiting almost 1,000 villages. We visited 1,000 schools, many of them tucked away in the remote mountain corners. Many of these schools took a few hours to reach. We had to climb a few hills to reach. These are schools that you will see in the border regions. Again, isolated from the rest of the village. Ladakh borders China and Pakistan. We visited schools which were functioning even in minus 15 degree centigrade winters. This is a village of Kargil, where, as you can see, all the children are here ready for school. Not one single school that we visited was shut. Not one single school was not functioning. And this is what we saw in the interiors of the schools. No furniture, no carpet, no libraries, no playgrounds, nothing for the children to do. And I said, what if we put all of these schools on a map? Can we encourage others to travel like I did? So that's what we did. We put all 1,000 schools of Ladakh back on Google Map, which didn't have the data at this point. We put all these schools back on the map, and we said, let's go out and ask people to help. And we said, if I told you there was a village on your route, if I told you that there was a tiny little school that could use your help, would you spend a little extra time and go help? Maybe teach, maybe carry some games, and help they did. And I want to share with you a little video of a team of people who came and helped us. We reached out to schools, to corporates, to colleges even, to come and help us reach out to these villages.
I think just when I heard there's a program that involves children, means to share some experiences and learn something from them, that excited me, and I signed up immediately. So that there's no looking back.
To volunteer at such a location where there's actually a need and it's not namesake volunteering really got me coming here and participating for this opportunity.
एक्चुअली दिस टाइप ऑफ प्लेग्राउंड इन्होंने आज तक देखा नहीं है। ये प्लेग्राउंड जो है इनके लिए एक नया एक्सपीरियंस होगा। इट विल बी क्वाइट न्यू एक्सपीरियंस फॉर अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ दिस विलेज। तो ये एक्साइटमेंट जो है ना बच्चों को स्कूल की तरफ खींचा चला ले आता है। तो ऑब्वियसली जब बच्चे स्कूल आने के लिए ज़्यादा एक्साइटेड होंगे, इनरोलमेंट बढ़ जाएगा, तो वो वन वे अदर वे कुछ ना कुछ सीखेगा ही।
hundreds of volunteers who came out and reached out to us. With the help of these volunteers, today we have set up over 200 playgrounds across Ladakh. Playgrounds which children had never seen before. In the barren lands, without color, we brought in color to these children's lives. We've furnished schools. We've given them places to sit, furniture which children have never seen before. Children are today sitting on chairs and tables, improving their posture and improving their reading. Over 200 plus schools. Many of these furniture was carried on horseback for over multiple days to reach the schools. We've carpeted, we've painted hundreds of schools. We painted it with the help of villagers who came out in hordes to help us because no one had ever reached there before. And we've set up libraries. We've set up libraries in over 350 schools because until we had reached, children didn't have storybooks to read. But this wasn't enough for us. We wanted to bring in the power of digital education into these schools. But how? How do you bring in digital education to a school where there isn't electricity, where there isn't internet? How do you do that? But there's one thing that we relied on. In Ladakh, even today, the last mile is not through the phone. Reaching a person in the last village is not through phone, it is still on foot. So we relied on the fact that people still continue to travel from one village to another for basic things. They have to travel for medical supplies, they have to travel to meet a doctor, they have to travel to get their money because their villages don't have ATMs. They have to travel to drop their children to school. So we said, if people can travel, why can't the data travel? So we built a highly specialized solar-powered digital education system that brings the power of digital learning to areas which don't have electricity or mobile connectivity. But the data and the content is carried by teachers through specialized apps that we have built. And when these teachers travel once a month to a connected zone, the data gets synced to the cloud, and consequently, we are able to see it and monitor what's going on in the school. This is a picture of our DigiLab. We've set this up in hundreds of schools across Ladakh and now also remote parts of Sikkim. And I want to show you again what our digital lab looks like.
May I come in, sir?
this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't traveled. If I hadn't traveled, I wouldn't have seen the remote parts of Ladakh. If I hadn't traveled, I wouldn't have found out how people live in these remote areas. And I would not have been able to design a solution like this. As we moved along, the aspirations of the people grew. Here is another. Alexa is now in Ladakh.
Alexa, play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you find.
10 years of working in a place like Ladakh. Today, 60 to 65% of our schools have internet, which is why I was able to get Alexa into Ladakh. 10 years and 60,000 children later, my feet are still traveling. The Indian Himalayan region is my footprint. This is where we want to go. We started with Ladakh, and now we're in Sikkim. We want to go where no one else has gone before. We want to reach those areas of the mountain, of the mighty Himalayan mountains, where people find it inaccessible and difficult to go to. Where would you like to travel now? Thank you.